Andile, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Now, Andile, you're one of the most optimistic people I've ever come across in the business space. Where are your optimism levels at this stage in the year 2020?
Well, to the extent, Marcel, that this is probably the single most difficult period I certainly remember in my working life. And I think that goes for many other people trying to navigate this, whether you're a professional or you're an entrepreneur. They are very low. It is a very difficult time. I think at a personal and humane level, which is probably where it should start, it's just difficult not to be human. It's difficult not to interact as we normally would. If I was at the NCA studios right now, I'd want to hug and you and everybody else that I bump into from the industry. Now I can't do that. That in itself just makes it very, very difficult because it calls for a very different behavior to what we are accustomed to or how we were created. Now, you take that and you extend it to businesses, you can only imagine how much needs to change and how much we need to reimagine how we do things, because there are certain things that are going to be with us for a long time, whether we like it or not. And social distancing, for me, is going to be with us for a very long time. For as long as we don't have a vaccine or a cure, there's going to be some level of caution that one will have to practice in order to make sure that we stay as safe as we can. And that just affects small businesses in so many, many ways, not just the obvious industries like hoteling, hospitalities, and restaurants, but even, industries that you wouldn't imagine it would. When you just look at how you normally do things, you realize that actually this thing has quite a big impact on how we do things day to day.
Now, Andile, you wear various hats and have done so for many years now already, but the thing that really lights your jets is the work that you do with young people, young professionals, and especially in the entrepreneurial space. And you've continued these important conversations with them during lockdown, which is probably when they need the most support right now. On your YouTube channel for I Am an Entrepreneur, you spoke recently to various businesses around the relief funds that may or may not be available. What are you hearing from them on the ground? Some of them are getting it, some can't get through the paperwork. There's so many obstacles in the way of them being able to get that much needed relief funds. What are you hearing from them?
So it's a mixed bag, Marcel. On the one hand, there are entrepreneurs who've been able to access the support, which is pretty good. I'm hoping that, of course, the 200 billion guarantee from the SARB and the National Treasury that the banks will be disseminating will hopefully make it a little bit easier for banks to lend to small businesses. I do fear, of course, because generally banks aren't necessarily geared for this type of lending, especially in this type of climate. They are deposit-taking institutions, and the way they lend is on the basis of so much, especially security, and of course the most important thing is serviceability. Now, in this market, you have a business that's not trading like it used to, so you have a serviceability problem. In this market, you have a business that's not collecting as much as it normally does, and therefore you may have a collectability problem. And what I'm hearing on the ground is actually fundamentally those two things. On the one hand, there's a liquidity issue. People are not being able to collect from their clients like they used to. And the simple reason is that their clients are having the same problem they're having. They also can't collect from their own clients. So that makes it difficult, obviously, to pay. And then the second problem is a trading problem. And I actually think that's a bigger problem, where it's just, your products or your services are just no longer as in demand as they used to be. Some industries are obvious. I mean, if you look at the airline industry, a story that you guys were covering earlier on, I also had an opportunity to speak to the CEO of Fly Fair. And when you hear their story, it's obvious, right? They're not flying. So obviously we're not buying tickets. Obviously they've got no revenue. I mean, you're onto a hiding to nothing at that level, because you don't have the liquidity, you don't have the cash flow to be able to cover your costs, yet your costs are still there. So I don't think that the issues are much different from big business to small business. The issue, of course, at small business level is that you don't have the balance sheet to help you through these times. You don't have the cash in the bank to continue to cover your costs, so you can wait for a time that you can actually operate and be okay. Most big businesses typically do. They've got shareholders, they've got reserves who are able to fund those businesses. Many small businesses just don't have the kind of balance sheet. And that's why, unfortunately, Marcel, we're going to see many people be out of work and many small businesses shut down. It's just what's going to happen.
Now, a lot of people have advice during these difficult times. Some would work, some wouldn't. But the word I keep hearing is pivot. There's a need for businesses to be able to pivot. And we're looking at footage from one of your events in Bloemfontein last year. And you're actually wearing a T-shirt that says pivot. What does this mean in a business sense?
In a very basic definition, if you are in a certain line of business and you've perhaps gone down the road in this business, you've been working hard at it, you do a particular thing, whatever it may be, but then you realize that actually, hold on, it's not working as well as I perhaps thought out it would. In fact, I've actually seen another option that I could do a similar thing, maybe a similar process, but maybe service a customer differently or sell a slightly different product or service. And that's what it really means to not give up and therefore pivot. It means to slightly change direction in order for you to perhaps take advantage of an opportunity you've seen, or at times it could also be just pure survival. So that's why entrepreneurs will typically say, I don't give up on what I'm going to do. I don't give up on my dream of running my own business. But now I clearly need to pivot, which means I need to slightly alter what it is that I've been doing so that I can, be successful, get a client who can pay for a service, etc. And in these times, you need to do that. You need to make sure that you don't give up. But at the same time as well, Marcel, we also need to be realistic. I think if there's one thing this time calls for, it's just for one to be sensible. What do I mean by sensible? I mean, just take the facts for what they are. These things are happening around you. You can see that social distancing is going to be around for a long time. You can see the stats that get reported day in, day out, overnight here in South Africa. Thankfully, we've got all this information. You can see where it's happening in the provinces. And now we can even see where it's happening even as close to the municipalities. What do you do with the business that you're in? Are you in the kind of business that will survive this time? And if you're not, pivot.
You make it sound so simple, so I'm going to leave it just at that. That's Andile Khumalo, founder of I Am an Entrepreneur. Follow him on social media. He's got a YouTube channel as well if you just want some encouragement and some advice if you're in that entrepreneurial and SMME space and are finding it very, very difficult to navigate these really tough times.